But our founding fathers believed that this country was founded by Christians on the gospel of Jesus Christ. The other philosophy is what our founding fathers had, that creation is true, and laws come from the Creator, rights are unalienable, and the government should be limited to two things: punish evildoers and defend us from outside invaders. Those are the only two legitimate functions of government. They should not be involved in welfare. They should not be involved in education. It's called a constitutional republic. That's how it started, folks. But evolution says, oh no, man's in charge, so we better decide truth and better decide right and wrong. And the basic philosophies of government are really based on creation or evolution. Second plank in Karl Marx's manifesto was a heavy progressive income tax. Don't get me started on that one. We have a long 30-page letter we can send you on that one. Send our office a few bucks to cover copies, and we'll send you our 30-page letter about this topic right here. Okay? The third one was abolish the rights of inheritance. Bible says a good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just. Karl Marx wanted to abolish the rights of inheritance. See, if God's for it, he's against it. Number 4, confiscate property rights. Number 5, a central bank. Remember, love of money, root of all evil. 1913, we got a creature from Jekyll Island, Georgia, called the Federal Reserve. You ought to read that book and find the history behind the Federal Reserve. Nothing federal about it, and there are no reserves. It's no more federal than the Federal Express or federal rifle shells. Okay. Love of money, root of all evil. The Bible says the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. You see, the rich folks wanted to figure out a way to get all of the money. They would like everybody in debt to them, so that when you work, part of your money goes to them, even though they didn't do the work. You did the work, but they get part of the money. That's how debt works, isn't it? If you borrow money for a house or a car, well, then you work to pay for, to give some of it away. Interesting. For centuries, the alchemists sought for ways to turn lead into gold. They failed. But the bankers discovered a way to do it. Start wars and finance both sides. Interesting. After the lead stops flying, the gold rolls in as interest payments on the national debt. Did you know during World War II, U.S. debt rose almost 600%, Japanese debt rose 1,300%, French debt rose almost 600%, Canadian debt rose 400%. Debt to who? Who do we owe this money to? What's the national debt now? Like 17 trillion when they're really honest and put all the numbers on the table? Who do we owe this money to? Every one of you is carrying in your wallet or your purse evidence of our debt. You want to see it? This is not a $5 bill. This is a debt note. This is proof of our debt. Federal Reserve note. This is not money, folks. That'd take a long time to explain all that, but the national debt is absolutely staggering. See, Nehemiah said, we have borrowed money for the king's tribute, and upon our lands and vineyards, and lo, we bring into bondage our sons and our daughters to be servants. I'm afraid we've got our sons and grandsons and great-grandsons in debt already right now, folks. Here's to give you a little bit of the history of the love of money and how this ties in. Okay? In 1776, we fought a war with England and gained independence from England and from the Bank of England. Only Congress had power to coin money. Jefferson warned if the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of currency, by the way, Federal Reserves are private banks. Okay? First by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. In 1792, Alexander Hamilton established a 20-year charter with the Bank of England. Big mistake, Alex. In 1812, renewal was denied and war broke out. England said, okay, charter's up, we want the colonies back. That's what the War of 1812 was really about. Okay? 1833, Andrew Jackson removed all money from the chartered banks and put them into state banks. In 1836, the rich men, the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, these kind of guys, had Mexico invade Texas, started a war to punish America for not keeping their money in the his banks. In 1861, these same rich men helped create the Civil War to disrupt the economy. They wanted to create debt and get their power back. See, they have power when everybody's in debt to them. They love it when Congress issues more money because they just print it and it's more debt. In 1861, the Industrial Revolution created great wealth in the hands of a few. You ought to read the book The Robber Barons for more on that. In 1907, banker J.P. Morgan deliberately created the financial panic to promote the idea of a central bank. In 1912, the communist Marxist Colonel House, who was Wilson's alter ego, he was in the Wilson administration, he wrote a book called Philip Drew, Administrator, to explain his conspiracy to establish a central bank and create a progressive income tax. 1913, Federal Reserve Act was passed and Federal Income Tax Act was passed. December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, the Federal Reserve Act passed. Then the 16th Amendment was passed. Now this is the greatest hoax in history. All the senators had gone home. This is Christmas. Colonel House walks in, announces to practically an empty Senate, the 16th Amendment has passed. Now when an amendment passes, all the states have to ratify it. When this 16th Amendment to allow for the income tax went out to all the different states, almost every state didn't even vote on it. When it came up for issue, they said, this is unconstitutional. We passed. We're not going to vote on it. So when they said passed, that didn't mean they agreed. That means they didn't want to vote on it. 16th Amendment was never ratified. The law that never was. Okay? That's a long, interesting story. Anyway, in 1916, Wilson, reflecting on the Federal Reserve Act, said, I have unwittingly ruined my country. From 1920 to 1929, the bankers increased the money supply by 62% to create the Roaring Twenties and brought people into the stock market. October 1929, the bankers called in their loans and sent the economy into the Great Depression. This was intentionally done. And then helped create the New Deal programs where they could loan the government money to rescue the economy. And guess who we're in debt to? Same guys. In June 1932, Congressman Louis McFadden gave his powerful speech to Congress, spelling out who had caused the Depression. On the third try, they finally had him assassinated. Congressman Louis McFadden. There was also, Lindbergh was very much outspoken against the banking system. And he ended up getting his baby kidnapped and murdered because of this same issue. Okay? 1933, the government debt to the bankers began to grow steadily. Millions readily accepted a Social Security number, which, by the way, is voluntary. And I don't have one. Okay? The rich men then tricked people into getting a Social Security number in order to get their benefits from the government. As usual, they created a crisis, the Depression, to encourage compliance. Here's an original Social Security card. Look what it says. Not for identification. New ones, you have to have for identification for just about everything, don't you? Look, if anybody asks for your Social Security number, just say, it's none of your business. I applied for insurance, and they said, for life insurance. And they said, oh, you don't have a Social Security number. Can't have insurance. I wrote them a letter. I said, I'd like insurance. Please insure me. They said, no, not without a Social Security number. So we're suing them for big bucks for discriminating against me. That should come to a head in the next couple of weeks. Call me and I'll let you know how it turns out. I might be able to fly all of you down to Florida to see our place. Okay? Here's go to the local post office and pick up a draft notice for you kids, selective service. Look what it says here. If you have a Social Security number, it is mandatory you include this information. If you don't have one, leave this block blank. It is not mandatory to have a Social Security number. They want you to think it is, but it is totally voluntary. What happened, we traded our real money, which is silver and gold, for worthless paper. Real soon, those who control the real money will require all transactions to be controlled electronically by an embedded chip. I have in my wallet a $5 Federal Reserve note from 1928. Very interesting reading. Look what it says here. Redeemable in gold on demand at the United States Treasury, or in gold, or lawful money at any Federal Reserve Bank. What are they telling me? I can trade this in for gold, or I can trade it in for lawful money. Isn't that what it says? You mean this is not lawful money? No, this is a Federal Reserve note. This is a debt note. This is not money. We've got a whole generation now who grows up thinking this is money, and it is not money, folks. It is a note. It's a debt note. That would be a long, interesting study. Also, you may want to get into. Then in 1933, a couple of years after this was issued, President Roosevelt declared to Congress of Governors that a national state of emergency existed. The Great Depression was going on. So the governors voted unanimously to give the president emergency power to wage war on the economy. These powers would not be available under normal constitutional process. March 1933, Congress voted to give the President of the United States and to the Secretary of the Treasury the emergency powers sanctioned to wage war through executive orders. Abraham Lincoln issued the first executive order to bring troops into the South. And by the way, I love my country, but the wrong side won that war. That war was not about slavery. That war was about states' rights. That's another long, interesting story. But in 1933, Section 5B of the Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917 was amended to include the citizens of the United States. By the way, capital U, capital S, you don't want to be a citizen of that one. You want to be a citizen of the small u, capital S. That's another long, interesting story. Okay? By and through their ability to own gold and silver as an enemy of the United States. In 1933, they said if you own gold, you're an enemy of the country. Everybody turned their gold in to the government. 1933. Then in 1934, this note was issued, which I have in my collection at home. It says right here, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private, and is redeemable in lawful money at the United States Treasury or at any Federal Reserve Bank. That's still not lawful money, folks. It's fraudulent. See, the note is evidence of debt, not money. The Coinage Act of 1792, which has never been revoked, defines a dollar as 25.8 grains of gold or 412 grains of silver. That's why a silver dollar was always the same size. It had to be 90% silver and had to weigh a certain amount. And it was a real lawful dollar. Here's the new euro currency. European Common Market. Interesting. Notice the woman riding on the beast here in both the coins and the dollars. Revelation 17. He carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast has 7 heads and 10 horns on the European currency. Interesting. Here's the Bank of England 10-pound note with Charles Darwin's picture on there. Now that's interesting. You want to study more about the Federal Reserve, you ought to get that book on the horns of the beast. To see more about the money issue, you can call, our ministry can order it for you. You can get it through us, or you can get it right there off this phone number on the screen. Or get this one to see how the Rockefeller family's been involved in all of this. You know, Khrushchev used to brag that he got all of his secrets from Rockefeller's CIA. By the way, the CIA was not a government organization. It was a private organization. Long story there. Basically, they took away our gold and gave us paper. Federal Reserve notes. Next, they're going to take away the paper and give us plastic, where you have to have a record of the transaction. There's no record of a paper transaction. Now, with computers, there can be a record of every transaction that's made. Finally, they're going to take away the plastic and put a mark in the hand or forehead. Coming soon.